Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th episode of the GG Show. So, today we have a very special guest. It's special for many reasons. It's someone who's doing something that is very close to our hearts, which is esports and competitions and tournaments for young people. But it's also the newest member of our Raptr family. So I welcome Jason Zhu, who's the founder and CEO of Battlefy.com, which is the largest open esports platform in the world, and who's also now my co-founder. So, hi, Jason.
What's up? It's good to be here.
So, how's it been? How long have you been here in Pakistan, and how's it been so far?
I've been here for a couple of days. It's a very nice, beautiful place. Been to Islamabad first. Very chill city. Very
Chill.
beautiful, a lot of greenery. Yeah. Then now in Karachi, which is very metropolitan. So, wonderful time.
Oh, man, how's the food been?
Spicy, but it's very flavorful. The meats. I'm a carnivore, so it's been nice.
I gotta ask this question: where's the food been better?
Are we comparing the two cities or?
Fuck yeah, we are.
The two cities? Oh my goodness! Well, if I say another name, I might not walk out of here alive. The honest answer is I can't tell. Yeah, my taste palette isn't as sophisticated for.
You're such a
Pakistani
fucking
food.
politician, man. I swear to God.
But it definitely has a very distinct culinary kind of influence, I would say here.
All right, I'll accept that answer. It's good. I know you really meant Karachi in your heart, so I'll just accept that. But anyways, man, so I want you to let our viewers know a little bit about how your journey into esports started. I've seen all your old podcasts and stuff. You were like a young, feisty, serious gamer, and you used to play Starfield. Like, you used to play StarCraft, and then you started this company. And so I just want you to give a few minutes on why you did what you did, and because, as I recall, you told me you dabbled in investment banking and trading and so many different things. Why this? And what excited you to do this? And what's been the journey so far at Battlefy?
Yeah. Well, it's more of a childhood's dream than anything else. I think like many of us here, we sort of grew up playing a lot of the most iconic kind of games and really spent way too much time on it, to be honest. But I grew up in a very traditional kind of Asian family where spending time on game wasn't something that your parents...
Oh, shock and awe. We don't know what you're talking about.
So, getting time to play games and train in a competitive game like StarCraft and be actually competitive took a lot of not only just focus, energy, practice, but also a lot of convincing of sort of your parents, right? And so I've definitely been threatened being kicked out of the house for playing too much. So like it's been a big part of my life. I would go to school, go to soccer practice, come home, do homework, and then I would train StarCraft for 4 hours a night, right? And in those times, like, YouTube didn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, you can't just go and watch very easily, like, how the pros were playing. And so I went to forums, at, like, Korean forums.
Message boards and forums.
Oh, yeah.
MIRC and stuff like... I used to have tons of these bulletin boards and message forums.
Yeah, like BB bulletin and stuff, yeah.
I heard MIRC is back now in like the seedy underbelly of all communities. Were you ever an MIRC user?
I heard. I
was a big MIRC user. There was great communities there,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've heard it's made like a comeback. And I just for shits and giggles, I went to the website and you can download it again, and it has servers and people are communicating on it. I hope it comes back because I used to love it. But anyways, yeah.
Dude, we grew up on that, right? RC, MRC, like.
It
that
was less
the only way.
distracting. You would go to these special channels. There would only be. That's why Discord is so popular. Like all the kids in my office, all my kids at home, they're like, "Oh, Discord is so cool." I said it's MIRC with colors. It's MIRC with colors. If you look at it, like if me and you look at it for the first time, we go like, "This is what This is what we used to use." It's like
Exactly.
hashtags and channels and shit. It's MIRC with colors, which is great.
Yeah. No, gamers invented a lot of things, right? And gamers
Anyway,
in
so-
another industry. Yeah, so spent a lot of time on that, and then gaming was also a reason why I learned how to program, because didn't have time to like play a lot of games, and MMOs just kind of started at that time, and well, first of all, it was Diablo 2. Right?
Gee, bro, I love it.
I don't know how many thousands of hours
Have you played the remaster?
I have not.
I dabbled in it again. I mean, you don't realize some of those games haven't aged as well as they do.
Yeah.
They look better in memory, right?
Yeah.
So, but the remaster really was good.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the
Okay.
remaster was worth it.
I want to keep the childhood memories pure.
It wasn't bad, to be very honest.
Oh yeah?
I don't like 3, but the 2 and the 2 remaster.
Yeah.
And nowadays I'm playing 4. And no, it has nothing to do with watching Musk play it on like Twitter, but like, he's crazy. He was playing it this morning as well.
All right.
Yeah, he was live streaming this morning. Like our morning. But like, I like Diablo 4 a lot.
I've converted to a PoE fan.
Really?
Yeah, after like D3.
But anyways, this wouldn't be us if this was not ADD fueled as hell. So we're jumping all over the place. So Battlefy, and you learn how to code.
I don't code. I mean, this is all kind of related because you'll see a lot of like I think founders who went into tech because of their experiences with games and coding, and so I used to build bots for MMOs just because I don't have time to play them, and then you would like eBay the items when it was still allowed. And that's how I learned how to code, and then that was like sort of one side of my life, and then went into kind of investing quite early on in my career. So that was like sort of the dark side of things.
Made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. This is the
it's a
typical cycle. Yeah.
I went through the roller coaster ride. I think earlier than some. And then after graduating, like I originally wanted to go into biotech, like nano robotics, and so that was my education. But the whole kind of biotech industry turned into pharmaceuticals, and
Sadly.
right. And I wasn't interested in that part, so
Nobody ended making a cryo suit like Crisis or a nano suit like Tony Stark.
no.
So it just turned into medicines, which is so boring.
Oh man, I mean, even this is a long time ago. Even at that time, like they had nano robots that could do like certain surgeries.
Yep.
and things.
I remember.
Those were cool. I was at the lab at
Grafting,
Berkeley.
like nanorobots doing skin grafting. because
Yeah,
For
yeah,
burn
yeah.
victims and for sutures, I've seen that.
Yeah.
And skin grafting was one of the first. I remember watching a time lapse video. Have you seen that? Years ago, a time lapse video of a guy's burned arm being grafted or nanografted by nanobots. It's amazing. You literally see, like over the hours, like a time lapse video, and it's just like somebody's coloring it in, and it's fantastic.
That's the future.
There's a future, man.
That's the future.
It is.
Yeah. So ultimately got into software, built a few companies, and
As
I
one
was at a
does.
junk-
As one does. Yeah.
and was at a junction in my life, which was like, do I start another company or
When is this?
man?
Because I want people
was
to
like
watch
a
this and get
decade ago.
I want people to watch this and get inspired as well, right? Like telling someone you did this at 50 is great for a completely different set of reasons, right?
Yeah.
But telling someone you did it at 21 is fucking awesome for a different set of reasons.
yeah. I think I was like 26 at that time.
Yeah, man.
And basically I was making it like a decision of whether to build something else again or go back to the dark side and go into investments. And I told myself like, and this was based on some experience with my previous companies, is like, if I was going to do it again, first it would have to have a potential like multi-billion-dollar kind of opportunity, and cultural changing opportunity. Second thing is it would have to be something that I'm truly just interested in. And I'm not going to use the word passionate because I think that's overused in sorts of ways. But yes, like it was something that I would do whether I was awake or semi-awake.
Yeah, I think that's the most like learning. The big learning I got was that people don't use the word passionate. Like I found the most apt description to be something that keeps me happy and interested every day. And I guess that qualifies whether you're half asleep or half awake.
Yeah.
You think about that part of your life and you're happy about it. It wakes you up in the morning. You feel like coming to work, seeing all of these guys here. I think that's like the best description. You don't have to be like superfluous about it or hyperbole. It's just something I like doing at all times.
Yeah. So, so I think I was lucky in that sense, which is like I knew what I liked early on, and also it wasn't just all games, right? I was very much kind of attracted to the PvP scenes because I was just very competitive growing up, particularly in sports and other things.
And does that come like as a personality? And I say this with no intended stereotyping. Was that a personality thing, or was that because of conditioning? Because people in China or in part of the world are just conditioned to be super competitive from an early age to get most of those opportunities that are like so hard to come by, simply because so many people compete for it. So was it a personality thing, or was it just like cultural conditioning, like fucking compete with everything?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people get that conditioned from culture or parents. For me, it was definitely more just personality. My parents, while being very like strict and for lack of a better word, tiger parents, they didn't force me to be competitive per se, i.e. like always wanting to be better or win, right? I think that's just like the personality, right? Yeah.
I'm starting to see some of it over the last 5 weeks.
Well, likewise.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
100%, man. Yeah. I tend to try to be the alpha in the room. 100%. You don't get to be where you are with limited opportunities without wanting to be one. So yeah, guilty as charged.
So that was the second criteria, and then the third criteria was it needed to be highly scalable, and something that I could leverage venture capital, because my previous companies were not, were basically like not from the venture space. So started doing this.
But at 26, I mean, that's quite a structured thought process, to be very honest, at 26. And I say that with compliment, of course. It's quite a structured thought process, because for someone who hadn't done venture before, or done something of the like, for you to be very clear about structuring in a way like this, is it because you had exposure to the venture world in your past life, or is because of where you lived, whether it was LA, I remember, or in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Is it because that was something that you were aware of? Was that the play, or
Right.
is it that you knew that you needed money to scale?
So I was in Vancouver at that time, and Vancouver kind of had a venture community. It was much smaller compared to what's available, south of the border, and way less developed and mature. But the concept was there, and that's how I got sort of first aware of that existence. And after kind of studying it and seeing why it exists and what its purpose is for the tech ecosystem, you see the value that it brings, right? Which is acceleration, right, and velocity. And the world's changing at a much faster pace, right? And it has been over the last 20 years, and it continues to be with the development of things like AI. So it was there was that criteria in there that's part of the decision making.
And that's what led you to Battlefy.
Yeah.
But you haven't still answered the question I guess a lot of my viewers want to hear. Why this business?
Why this business?
And I'll tell you why I asked that. This business is now, what, 12 years old?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I asked that. It's because I'm in the same boat with Raptr today. You were in an economy, or you were in a country where esports was there, but definitely not what it is today, right? In fact, it wasn't what it is today anywhere at that point in time.
Yeah.
A. B. The VC ecosystem was limited, right? And C. Convincing the limited VC ecosystem to invest in a nascent idea with someone who's 26 years old was difficult, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Because that's what we dealt with Raptr here. Like
Yeah.
over the last 2-3 years, we're building, and you know this, that's why you're on board. We're building something completely new to the market, exposing people to a completely new way of partaking in what they love and their passions, while seeking out investors in a very limited VC ecosystem about a nascent market space, which is completely experimental. And
Yeah.
I know how difficult it could have been. So what was the passion like? Why Battlefy? Why competitive esports? Why a platform to change lives, first in Canada and then North America? Why this idea? Because you talked about venture funding, growth to $1 billion market, and scale. These are 3 things you mentioned, right? You were exposed to 3 industries that you could build this hypothesis on, and which would satisfy all 3, right?
Yeah.
You've been in the software side, you've been in the trading and financial side,
Yeah.
and you were into gaming. So
Yeah.
why Battlefy?
So there's 2 reasons. And so one of the 3 reasons, like, I had to be really interested in the thing. And what I was interested in was the competitive side of
Aspect of
video games, right? And so growing up as a competitive player, both in StarCraft and Counter-Strike, the ecosystems around that were very grassroots, right? And they were not scaled, they were not automated, and they didn't have the kind of integrations and support from the game developers themselves, right? It was super grassroots.
Yeah, because publisher-led gaming was,
It was years after that.
it's just nowhere close.
Exactly. And so I just, the first reason was I really wanted to create something that I would use, right? And I would personally, compete in. And by the way, like, the first tournaments on the system, I actually played in there.
Was it more popular? And the reason I ask is because I want everybody to understand. Over here, when esports started, it started from the college system. It started from universities and colleges because close-knit communities, student bodies, started off as just pure entertainment, and then it took on a life of its own because there are like 5,000, 6,000 students, or like 1,000, 2,000 at minimum at a university.
Yeah.
Was that the case at that time when you started? No, not really.
No.
Wasn't that a thing in the States, however?
College came way after the
What
first
about the
wave.
US at that time?
Same.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. School, academia came in after.
So when you say grassroots, what do my listeners think you're saying? Do
like
you
communities,
mean like
just
LAN
Facebook
communities or like
Facebook communities, Twitter communities. Discord didn't exist at that time,
Yeah.
so it was mostly those 2 platforms. Or IRC was still a thing, and there
Yeah,
was
it
a
was.
few others, right?
a couple of others were there?
So those communities were actually just hosting events themselves, like they existed, right? Obviously, LAN centers also did things themselves, right? LAN center in North America wasn't, and still isn't as scaled as it is
LAN
in
center
Asia,
is
right?
such a Canadian term.
Yeah.
LAN centers. Yeah.
PC cafes.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of gaming social groups that had events going on that were using a disparate,
Yeah, just like I know what you mean. Like the community tournaments here.
Yeah.
Closed groups doing stuff however way they want to.
Exactly. And then you have like broadcasters and things that were coming up, and like pro players who would do certain things. So there was not much structure to it. There was a lot of activity. There was no good tools, obviously. And the game developers, for most cases, they weren't involved. So that's one thing, is I just want to build something I would use, right, as a competitive gamer.
And did you approach it from a technology problem, or did you approach it as a UX and this is how people should do these things?
Yeah.
So you understand what I mean, right?
Yeah.
One's like so a lot of people have the same passion, but they tackle it from a technology point of view. Let me build something great that has all these features, and then there's a top-down view to it, like, oh, this is not the right way to do it. People should be able to have tournaments with their friends, and they should be hosted, and let me think of what I can build to do that. So what was your view? Was it a top-down or like a technology up view to it?
Yeah, so software is just a means to an end, right? So the problem that we saw was it was very manually expensive to host an online event, because like, just imagine if you're hosting a basketball league, right? Everyone's there, they're physically present, right? And you have kind of referees that can, interact with the players as they go.
And there's a schedule to it, and there's
Exactly.
and physical limitation itself dictates structure because it's one court and everybody got to wait, and
Yeah.
So yeah.
Whereas in esports, you don't see those people. It's very hard to coordinate.
The trust metric is completely different. One of the things
Oh,
I learned
100%.
when we started doing esports on a big scale in 21, 22, the trust metrics are absolutely different. And it can make you or break you. Like when we did our first Valorant tournament, people went nuts on Discord. People who cheated and we kicked off went nuts on Discord, like trying to claim foul and all of that, and then everybody starts losing trust in the community, right? The trust system is completely different when you're doing online.
Exactly. And so basically very difficult to manage, and because of that, these events were very small, right? And I think the largest events at that time were like maybe 1,000 teams or something, or 1,000 players, and you had armies of volunteer admins doing those, right? And in order for esports to become a legitimate industry like traditional sports, and sort of this is the second reason, right? Like, me going into it is there's a business reason to go into this. And in order for esports to actually get to a recognized place, or in a similar recognition as traditional sports, you need to formalize it as an industry, right?
Yeah, you need to create infrastructure around it. Otherwise, it will never be considered an industry.
Correct.
It will only be considered utility, and that's a box you don't want to be in.
Yes, exactly. And so, professionalization was part of the consideration. But being sort of a technologist, the first problem we wanted to solve was scale. It was like, why can't we have 100,000 people league, right? And not need 1,000 volunteers, right? How do you make the economics work for that?
And that's where the technology came in.
Exactly. And so that's where the technology first came to be. We started building sort of these integrated tools. Very quickly we were like, hey, why aren't these things, integrated with the games, right? And there is so much things that can be automated if we just had certain kind of data and API access to that. And so, I literally started calling up like C-suites at like game developers and publishers, just to, explain, what we're doing. And that was quite the journey, right? So you had a kid that's never been in the gaming industry,
claiming to change the way it's done.
Yes.
And they think you're stupid.
And we're asking for data, which
nobody has given. Nobody gave back then.
Yeah.
Nobody gave back then. There was no legislation around it.
Yeah.
There was no concept of API gateways for data access. Yeah, man.
So basically, like, when knocking on doors everywhere, one, having to kind of explain that, there's a phenomenon called esports first and foremost, because nobody...
Which people used to call e-gaming. People still call it. We were in a meeting that day, someone called it e-gaming. I've almost had a stroke.
And obviously there's...
Gaming is E, like... There's no analog gaming that you do by turning a motor with your hand. It's all E.
So that was something.
No, but I want to touch again on the publisher side, and I'll tell you why I asked that question. Because a lot of founders, and because I'm still a startup, I don't know when that stops happening, but clearly not anytime soon. But a lot of founders lose hope when they have a great idea, right? But the people that a lot of that idea depends on don't back them up or don't help them, so they drop the idea, right?
Yeah.
And so I go back to when I started the cloud company back in 2010, 2011. And when we were building the stack, one of the good advice my co-founder, who's a brilliant engineer, did was he said, you know what, we should go and meet a few friendlies, as you put it, customers who would be our first adopters, right? And then they would tell us what their expectations are. So before we finalize and commit the code to a feature set, let's at least get and at that time, design thinking wasn't a thing back in 2010. Today, this process is literally called design thinking.
Yeah.
But at that time, we were like tech guys, tech bros thinking, oh, we'll build the best thing and, whatever. And I remember we had about 33 meetings in a month. 33 B2B meetings are tough to get with C-suite. We got laughed out of almost every one of them. Yeah. And they were like, and you know how you said you have to explain gaming? I had to explain to them that I'm not Dropbox or Google Drive. When I say cloud, I'm not Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. That was frustrating. But at the same time, them saying stuff like, we don't even put our emails on Gmail for more than necessary. We're going to give you our data. And because cloud is very different from internet, right? Cloud is like literally data sanctity, data protection, all of that stuff. And we were severely disappointed, like seriously, right? And then when we were literally just trying to gonna give up on the idea, we met this great company here. Shout out to them. We'll always be grateful to them. It was a company, one of the largest in Pakistan, called Engro. It's a conglomerate. And Engro at that time had these two great guys, this dynamic duo called Omer and Mazhar Kabir. And they said, hey, we ain't got anything big to give you right now because we're not built to be cloud native. We have a project coming up. We'll just put the website on your cloud just for shits and giggles. And then you have a big company on board, you figure it out. It was a $70 order. I think we spent more on food celebrating it than the size of the order itself. But that spurred us on. And then immediately after that, we got a government service on board, like a day after this happened. And out of the 33 or 35 meetings with this, these were the only two who agreed to be like the guinea pigs for our setup. And these two were enough to motivate the out of us. And then it set us on a path to, where we eventually went. So I want to know, very honestly, I'm not asking for names. How many people actually told you to F off? And how many actually said, this kid might have something?
Oh, yeah. Dude, I think most entrepreneurs will have had multiple experiences with this, which is you'll get 99 no's and then suddenly get one yes. So it was definitely mostly no's, yes, and a lot of I once sat down.
Do you remember the first yes?
I remember the first yes, but it wasn't even a yes. So I'll come to that. So basically, I remember having a sit down with one of the most respected executives in the industry. And 5 minutes into the conversation, he goes, Jason, stop. Nobody watches people play video games. And that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, you should have been like, let me just go out and call Amazon and tell them not to do Twitch ever.
Yeah. I had another executive in a extremely large public gaming company say, Jay, I like you, but this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
No way.
Yeah.
And they probably thought they were schooling you. Let's save this kid some valuable time. Did any one of them offer a job to you? Because that happened to me a lot. I used to go to these big banks and companies pitching my product, and they'd be like, screw that, join us as like a CTO or CEO. I'm like, no, I have my own company, I'm not joining you.
Well, it sounds like you're way more qualified than I was back at that time because, I didn't get job offers. So all I did was, okay, that's cool. I'll just send you updates every 2 weeks. Right?
So that's where it comes from when you tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just say, hey, this is our progress. This is how many users we got. This is and
these are the couple of thousand stupid users who don't watch people playing esports who are on my platform right now.
Yeah, and when
not in so many words.
Yeah, when you first start and you had good alpha product, you know, people kind of, and it's actually really funny because I Skyped about 50 communities before building the product, and I said, hey, like I have this problem. Do you guys have this problem organizing stuff? And they're like, yeah. And I said, if I build something, would you use it? And they're like, sure. And so like, after a couple of months of building an alpha, a really broken one, I called them back and said, hey, we have this product, you want to try it? And most people there was like, oh, we didn't even know you were serious
about it, yeah.
building it,
Yeah.
right? So, so I met a lot of great executives in the industries, many of whom actually ended up investing in us after saying no to us in the beginning.
That's such a sweet feeling.
Yeah. I mean, they saw sort of the numbers, right?
Really got to respect them for having that kind of.
100%. Yeah. And we also had, a very similar story of, investors where like, you had a couple of individuals who just sort of believed, I think, in the entrepreneur, right? And they took a big leap of faith, right?
I think most nascent VC investments are entrepreneur based because anybody can make a judgment on a business case, right? But yeah.
So many of those early investors I am eternally grateful to because they took a bet on literally
nothing. Yeah, man. Shout out to our investors as well. Thank you always for being the first couple of checks that got us rolling, man. I don't think they'll fully ever appreciate what that did for us.
Oh,
I think it wasn't just another check for them, but it was the check for us.
Yeah, the only check.
The only check for us. Yeah. You know who you are.
So yeah, that was.
So who was the first one, bro?
Game company.
I don't care who was the first guy. The first game company that said, "This kid's got something. Let's help him out."
Yeah. So it wasn't So I was actually playing poker with one of the founders of Riot Games, and
as one does.
Yeah, as one does. And I pitched our idea, and the answer I got was, "Hey, listen, we're really good at B2C products. We're actually building something like yours right now. But hey, here's the person that's in charge of the project. If you can convince him to do a collaboration, it's all you." So it wasn't a yes, it wasn't a no, it's that here's an opportunity. And so I took that opportunity. I went to visit.
And did they become the first people you?
Yeah, they became our.
So it was a yes.
They became our first API integration, and it wasn't even an API at that time. It was a very hacked together kind of a solution that they had.
The pre-API world, I remember.
Yeah.
Socket-based integrations. I guess that's what you did. Literally, that's what it used to be. It used to be like socket-based integrations.
Yeah. So,
which is so wild if you think about it. Now you were actually getting into someone's code to integrate. It was insane.
Technology has evolved.
Yeah.
So we actually beta launched that into the world publicly, and what ended up happening was our product got more traction than the internal ones, and the internal ones got shut down. And we became the default platform, and after that we sort of just started to, and esports started to get a little bit of traction. So the first world championship at LA Staples Center for League of Legends, I think that opened a lot of people's eyes.
I was literally about to ask you this. I was literally about to ask you that what was the watershed moment for your industry, regardless of whether they were customers or not, that really catapulted the industry into the mainstream, and you just answered it. Yes. It was the League of Legends.
The first Worlds, right?
Did you see the recent one 2 weeks ago?
Oh yeah.
And I had Linkin Park, so they got my vote.
They've always been great. I mean, but that was the first big example after the era of WCG, right? Where And it was something like the whole entire, I think 12,000 seats were sold out in like 20 minutes and crashed like the site that sold the
Those events are
tickets.
amazing. They're like concerts. I mean,
Oh,
to anyone who doesn't
yeah.
watch gaming, they're just the equivalent of concerts. It's
Yeah.
like-minded people coming together for 4 or 5 hours, sometimes even more, maybe 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And now it's actually grown in scale with digital media, more sponsors, so now they can afford people like Linkin Park and other artists coming in, and it's like a full day of celebrating what,
Yeah.
the game and what it's about.
Yep. There's a lot of crossover between like certain music genres and
Yeah, so that's why if we talk about it being like a huge Venn diagram, and the target demographic has like there's a lot of similarity between their appreciation for music, art, apparel,
yes.
food, pop culture. It's like you can literally define it.
Yes.
Cross boundaries, like you go to a Comic Con in Pakistan, and you go to a Comic Con in, let's say, for example, Japan, SDCC. It's very similar in what not similar in scale, definitely, but very similar in what appeals to those people.
Yeah.
It's like literally, like think of it like a freaking global Venn diagram of people.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
This was, I mean, now when you look back at it, it was definitely a cultural wave, right? It was a shift. It was a
100%,
it was a generational shift in behavior. But at that time, when I was calling it a generational shift, a lot of people looked at it and said, "Is it really?" Right? And the people who obviously became partners and investors early, they were like, "Yes, we believe in that."
What game do you think changed the tide? I don't mean League of Legends as the event, but what game do you think really changed the landscape for casual gaming to turn into serious competitive, like competitive? No, I won't say careers. It was too early to be careers, but like to be seriously competitive. Was it Dota? Was it League of Legends? Was it
StarCraft.
Warcraft?
The StarCraft.
What about World of Warcraft and stuff? I'm just asking because that game used to be huge here.
I see. For from an esports only standpoint, it was for sure StarCraft. Like, South Korea really made it into a cultural and sporting phenomenon. I mean, it was on television before,
Anything else of this sort was, yeah.
right? And that was like 25 years ago, or something like that.
Shit.
20 years ago. 20 years ago? Yeah, 20 years ago. It was 20 years ago. So, yeah, that sort of started it in as a sort of country national wide example of where it could be. And then obviously it started trickling out. I mean, Counter-Strike being one of them, Warcraft 3, and then into like Dota 1, Heroes of New Earth, and then ultimately like League of Legends kind of blowing the lid off during that era in terms of playership, right? And so there was the sort of the WCG kind of Cali kind of era, right? Which hit a specific scale and then cooled down, and then the new wave, right? It started when sort of kind of then the new wave was League of Legends. So yeah, that event really opened people's, like, the general public's eyes in terms of like how big this was.
I think it's always an economics question, right? For any industry, when that stadium, when the Staples Center sold out, everybody who was in alternative media or was like, this is a money-making opportunity. This is an event that and I'm talking from their point of view, this was an event that they thought we never heard about.
Yeah.
We didn't think was important, and it sold out 12,000 seats, right?
Yeah.
And it's always an economics game, right?
It was no longer a grassroots underground activity, right? And I used to compare this to like this community, 10 years ago, this community as like EDM.
Yeah.
It was it was very it's a very specific
it was pockets.
niche.
It was pockets.
Pockets, right?
Now it's woo. It's
scalability.
insane. It's larger than most large concerts, right? And so we cover a lot of pop culture here as well because of IGN. And then the closest parallel I can draw is to wrestling. So in 2018, 2019, I guess, a couple of these wrestlers had the hypothesis that the global wrestling community is dominated by one large company, and there's room for a new player out there which has a more indie flavor to it. I mean, it's all structured and it's a billion-dollar company, but it has to be very indie, like very like rough and gritty and community. And so these 5 of these wrestlers, and I'm a wrestling nerd, so I know the names like Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and one other guy, I don't remember his name. And they said, hey, let's do like they went to a lot of these investors, right? And nobody listened to them. Everybody was like, screw this, WWE is there. There's just no point in doing this. And like, no, the market, the independent wrestling scene is very fragmented. It needs a big player who can like create like a structure and a funnel around it. So they've decided that they'd get together, pool in whatever money they had, and do this event, an indie event in LA, called All In, right? No company, just indies calling in favors, people flying in, putting on a 5-hour wrestling show. 23 minutes, server crash, sold 10,000 tickets. The place only had a capacity of 10,000 people, right? Even they were surprised, and they're like, what the fuck, right? Yeah. But just like the League of Legends example you give, what immediately happened after that is that the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the US NFL team, and the English Premier League team Fulham, Shahid Khan, they reached out to these guys and they said, let's create a whole freaking company around it. And hence AEW was born, right? So there are these events and there are these moments in pop culture that completely change the economics of it. Yeah. And then let's be very clear about this. People keep saying people are passionate, but at the end of the day, if the economics are not there, it remains like an armchair hobby, right? Exactly. Like if you didn't have these guys earning $1.5 million on Dota, if you didn't have, the Arsalan winning like $500,000 on Tekken, these industries won't exist. They'd be armchair industries.
Yeah, no, 100%. So like the spectacle, it's not spectacle, the event, and for that event, I invited many of the large venture capitalists in LA who, it was very hard to describe the why people were watching. So I decided, like, instead of me explaining, you guys just go and experience it yourself. So plotted them down in the middle of the stadium, and I just kind of left them there to enjoy. At halftime, I went down and I said, what do you think? And they're like, I don't understand. Like, why are 10,000 people screaming at a screen in the middle of that, in the middle of the stadium? And so they brought all the videos and the footages back to Monday morning, like, partner meetings. They all ended up investing in esports.
And that's the conversation we had. So in 2022, when we started with first streaming to test our hypothesis around the payments part, people would generally ask me, why would people watch someone playing? Like, why? Okay? Yeah. So I would explain it in 2 things. I'd be like, do you not go and watch football highlights on YouTube?
Like, why do you watch? Like,
so why do you watch football? If you can't afford to fly down and watch it on a stadium, why are you watching last night's football, like American football, soccer, whatever, on YouTube the next day? Aren't you stupid to be staring at a screen, right? So that's number one. I would always be like, and they'd be like, okay, but why are they watching like Ninja stream on Twitch for like 5 hours, right? And paying him like $15 million like a month. I'm like, okay. I said, think of it this way. What if Lionel Messi had a channel on any godforsaken platform, or maybe even on his own website, like lionelmessi.com or whatever, and he said, every day for 4 hours, I'm going to do like the best shots. I'm going to teach like the best ways to dribble, to pass, to whatever. I said, would you watch it? They're like, fuck yeah. So I'm like,
yeah, what's the
what's the difference, right? Just because you don't relate to something doesn't mean that. I said, these guys watch these people and these players, and then I, till today, go into a painful monologue explaining the difference between sports and athletics. I said sports is a spectator competitive event. Athletics is a physical spectator competitive event. And this was explained to me by someone. You never heard this description? I think it was a perfect description. They said sports is spectator competitive events that people follow.
Huh.
And most parents and most people on earth confuse the two. They say, but this is not sports. I said, no, this is sports. This is not athletics. Because they're not physically like running on a field, or they're not actually physically holding the guns and shooting like 50 people like on some colored landscape. But it's sports. And now I feel that people start to understand, oh yeah, it is a sport. It's not athletics. So you still have the gym bros who will probably think, it's just a waste of time. You would rather go and play football on the field. Right. Sure, and they're entitled to that opinion, right? But at least now people accept that it's a sport that millions of people watch.
I mean, it's surprising to me that today people would question
They
whether
do,
it's
bro.
a sport or not. I think 10 years ago, for sure, they were questioning the nomenclature.
I don't know if you
of it,
picked
right?
up on it. Me and you had a lot of meetings in San Francisco. In 3 of those meetings, people weren't gamers, and people didn't understand gaming, and people didn't understand why we do it. I was on Threads. It's a shitty app, I know, but I was on Threads this morning. I was on Twitter this morning, and people were I can show you some tweets, like random tweets, where people are like, do you know anybody above 30 who still games? Is that not lame? Do they not have a life? This is today. Like, I can show you the post on Twitter, and because I commented on it and shit as well.
Yeah.
Echo chambers, man. It is what it is. Well, like, we don't care. The industry is going to keep growing. The population is now more younger people than ever before. It's more digital than ever before. Pakistan is like what, 63%, 70% people below the age of 30,
Yeah.
or the age 25.
Yeah.
So it's insane. But yeah, so when was the final, like, my damn product is ready, go ahead and use it? When was that?
We launched pretty early in the development cycle. Again, adopting to a lot of the best practices of startups. And our real public launch was, I don't even remember, 24 maybe, or 2014, where it's the first integration. We did a beta, and then we started really scaling, not just on the community level, but also on the college level. And we were adding integrations, adding games every single month. We were adding regions, and it was actually really funny because, esports is a global phenomenon by nature, right? And when we first launched the platform, we had an influx of Japanese users. And obviously our site was in English, and so we had users post screenshots of the platform on the forums, and the guys would translate it.
Oh, because
on
Google Translate wasn't there, and now Chrome translates stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So they were manually translating all screenshots inside the forums, teaching other Japanese communities how to use our platform. That was how passionate they were in getting that.
Holy shit.
And when there's some watershed moments around, like, with when you go, oh yeah, your product is kind of working. Like, at one point we were growing, I think our user base, a few months after we launched, we were growing like at 21% a week in terms of users on the system. And so it was a
I'm looking at the percentages you wrote on the whiteboard yesterday. I'm like, okay.
B2C businesses, I think, platforms, I think the initial stages, like, that's when you go, okay, like, you have some sort of product.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then
So I take a not a segue, but a pause here, and I want you to explain to our listeners here, because over the coming years you'll play a bigger and bigger, hopefully, part in the lives of Pakistani esports players, Battlefy and Raptr. So I want you to take a pause here and explain in the most gamer way possible. Explain what Battlefy is in its totality, and what is it that you achieve today that wasn't possible before for gamers?
Yeah. So
Because I want people to get a context as to why Battlefy is here in Pakistan now, and why they're with Raptor, and why you're on board, and so I want you to understand them to understand the value behind Battlefy.
yeah. So I'm assuming like most audiences are gamers. So
Yeah.
So basically, you can create, manage esports tournaments and leagues, or you can go find them and play them. That's it. It's very simple.
And what sets you apart from all the other commoditized platforms like Challenge and a couple of the others that makes you the biggest out there and makes you the best out there? Is it just simply the amount of years you've been at it, or is it the support from, what is it, like 350 plus publishers and stuff?
350,000
Plus,
plus organizations
Organizations.
that use the platform. There is a couple of big distinctions. Number one is we are probably the most feature-rich systems for customizing the entire experience in the field. And from the outside looking in, most people go, "How complicated can managing esports be?" Right? And I'm sure there are people listening to this who actually run the events. They'll laugh, right? It is super complicated, right? And it's very much attributed to the how competitive formats are being created, run, and the nuances of essentially online competitions, right?
Yeah.
Number two is we are integrated with games, so a lot of automation is possible where you don't have to take a screenshot and upload it onto a Discord channel to verify that you won, for example, right? You can have post-match stats directly on your brackets, right? You can have some replays on your Xbox, automatically show up on your tournaments. So things like that that completely differentiate us against sort of like the other platforms. On top of that, we're also very known in the industry of providing the enterprise solution in the market.
The B2B side of esports. Yeah.
Correct. And so people might ask, like, what does that even mean, right? And so, imagine all of these like big events done by publishers or sports leagues or brands, right? Like the ALGSs, the FCs, the Nintendo championships. Those are essentially global events, right? With a lot of complexity and a lot of players. And our platform is by far the most used for these levels of competition, right? And we also have a global operations team that tournament admin those events. And as you can imagine, a lot of these events are in every continent in like 20 different languages, right? That are running 24/7 over the weekends, right? And so we have an amazing global operations team that does that.
So, coming to Pakistan, and we're looking at Battlefy being here with a Pakistan-specific platform or a Pakistan-accessible platform, localized. What are the couple of things about the market here that made sense for you to start exploring this at this point in time? And it may not be what's here today. It may be something you've seen coming your way tomorrow. But what are those key things that made you interested in saying, okay, let's look at Pakistan over the next 3 to 5 years and what it unlocks for us?
Yeah. So obviously, number one thing was Raptor being or started here. But two is that as I learned throughout the sort of the weeks is the population age distribution, 70% being in the youth category, which is something very similar we see in other Southeast Asian countries. And there's a lot of similarities, but one of those is that the gaming penetration within those populations is massive, right? You have certain games that have over 90% population penetration in certain countries in this part of the world.
Like Mobile Legends, MLBB.
Which is insane. Like, you can't even say that for a traditional sport, right? Maybe
Can't say that
cricket
for
in
anything.
India, right? Like, and so this is way beyond just an entertainment piece. And so not only is it going to have a lot of impact on sort of the time spent by the youths, but it is also a great bridge into some of the most desired careers, meaning STEM-related careers, right? And if you ask a lot of the kids today why they choose technology, engineering, mathematics, it's because of that they're gamers. It's because they want to make games, right? Or be a part of the industry. Or even media, like people want to be broadcasters, right? And they go into advertising and in content. It's pushing the younger generation into positive behaviors, right? Which is something that, when we grew up, like, that's not the narrative, because the narrative is gaming is a waste of time. The parents are like, you're basically wasting your life away in those things.
I met this person at a recent conference, and they said that I need to take some advice from you. And he knew I was in gaming, so I figured the advice would be like, my son likes gaming. Where do I send him to study? Is there any? Because those are the usual questions I get. There's nothing in Pakistan, or is there something in Pakistan, or do I have to send him to like Malaysia or Thailand to study? Because those are great countries as well to learn this. But I was so surprised. This gentleman was a senior technologist, world varied, and young. And he said, I am very disturbed. So with what? He said, my son plays a lot of video games. So my immediate question was, I said, okay, how is he in school? He goes, straight A student.
So why do you care?
Oh, no. So then I immediately thought to myself, I said, oh, then it's a behavior thing. Maybe the kid's like a loose cannon. And I said, okay, how is he as a kid? Any ADD, any ADHD? Has he got temper issues? Is he doesn't play nice with others? Like, what's he like? He's like the life of the house, the sweetest kid, class prefect, loves his parents, great brother, excellent 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid. And I kept looking at him, I said, I am failing to see the problem here. I said, so he just went like, what do you want to know? I said, no, I want to know your problem. Like, you just told me all these amazing things about this kid, that he games like 4 to 5 hours a day, but he's also a straight A student. He's the class prefect. He's great to his parents, great to his siblings. He's the life of the party. What? He's like, nobody plays games. I said, so what? And I told him, I said, how old are you? So he told me his age. So I said, you're roughly around the same age as I am. He said, when we were younger, our parents would scream from the balcony because we were just doing the same thing with cricket. We would be playing cricket for 5 hours at a stretch. Our parents would be calling us from the house balcony. They'd send the older brother or the dad down after 3 hours to grab us by the neck and come up because we had to do homework and go to school the next day. I said, why do you think that was okay, but your son just replacing that with video games is bad? He's like, nobody should go out and do other things. I said, but does he want to? He's like, no, not really. I said, is he a healthy kid? He's like, yeah, he works out. I'm like, I fail to see the problem. But then this is not just one example. Over my life, even before Raptr, I have met 50 people like this who claim that the fact that the child plays games is a problem. It's not causing any problem, clearly, but that's a problem. Why? It's just years of culture. It's that conditioning. Years of conditioning by people saying gaming is bad. Gaming teaches you to be lazy. Gaming is yada, yada, yada. Now, I was in SF and I was hearing on the radio, surgeons who play games 23% less error rate because of better hand-eye coordination, better finger tactile movement.
Yes. Yeah.
So now they're thinking of putting in an optional course where they get to play and train with some esports players so that their reflexes, their tactile movement, and it's an opt-in course, but very soon it'll be a mandatory course because 23% isn't to be scoffed at. 23% error rate on surgery could mean the difference between life and death. So it's depressing sometimes, man. And I'm sorry, North America is not absolved from this. You have parents today as well over there who feel...
It's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, of course it has. It has over here.
Academia has already kind of accepted, through obviously real data and research, that this is good for kids. But like in the early days, that question is literally the most asked question wherever I go speak. At any conference, at any school.
Same here.
And my answer at those times in the early days was, hey, listen, like, you can overdo anything.
100%.
Right? And it will be bad. And if people want to be addicted to stuff, they can be addicted to anything. Someone who will golf 12 hours a day, like, right? But there's something like, my personal experience is, hey, gaming got me into programming. Gaming got me into organizing large groups at a very young age. Like, play WoW, you're doing raids, right? I used to raid with a bunch of, like, in my teens, with a bunch of white-collar lawyers and accountants in New York. But I was a teen, right? And our guild has like 300 people. And like, if I didn't play that, then I wouldn't be a teen, like organizing a bunch of adults.
Dude, I got into development because of games. Purely. I literally know it. I'm not just saying it because the topic's here. I know I got into development because of games. Because I thought I'd learn C, C#, and C. They were the base languages for modeling and for physics at that time within the game engine before all these ready-made engines were there. And that's why I got into it.
And now that I have a kid, I know you have kids, right? You let them play games. And I have a young kid. He's like 5. I gave him Minecraft when he was less than 2.
And look at how he goes at it now, my friend.
Right? I gave him Minecraft when he was 2. I gave him Monster Hunter when he was 3.
It's actually quite kosher. Yeah, people think by the name, but if anybody hasn't seen the game, it's actually quite a cool game for a kid to play. He gets to enjoy his fantasy world. It's a beautiful fantasy world with beautiful fantasy creatures. It's great.
It's coordination, hand-eye. It's because I didn't want to get the best hand-eye coordination training is obviously shooters, right? But I don't want him to play shooters at this age. So you give him something quite mechanically complicated, right? Like Monster Hunter. It's not like fighting games, right? Or it's similar but slower, right? And Minecraft teaches him a lot of different things. Like it's just Lego. Minecraft is just generations. Like, why wouldn't you have him play it? But also,
which is why I love the Lego games too. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and in Minecraft, because you have all these like redstones and stuff. Like, I was teaching him about like switches and things in Minecraft because I want him to understand how electricities work. Like, this is, what a redstone is in real life, and this is what a lever and a button does. I'm turning on real lights versus turning on lights in Minecraft, right? So you're teaching him real life stuff. And then like I got him TerraTech, which is a vehicle building.
I know what it is. Yeah.
And you go, okay, here's how planes fly. Lift, weights. Here's what a gyro does, right? Yeah. So if you just like, for parents who are just considering or like thinking about this, if you point anything in the right direction of learning, you'll get something out of it. If you give them like the not so educational games, we talk about freaking some mobile games and a lot of now Roblox games, right, who are kind of mindless. Those things I don't introduce.
But I'm sure they have a lesser positive impact, but there's positive impact nonetheless. And I agree with your point about overdoing anything. So my older son, and this is such a great point, because my older son, he loves playing FIFA and he loves playing Call of Duty, but he also puts in about 3 hours a day on football, soccer, to you. And he just thought the more hours he puts into it, the better he'll get. So he'd show up on weekends at the school. He'd show up at free time in the evening at the school, and he'd play. And then his coach called him aside one day, not one day, literally like 3 weeks ago when I was in SF. And he said, my coach said, bro, you'll blow out your knee. You can't play this much. You'll blow out your knee and you'll grind your ankle bones and your shin bones. There's a certain amount of time you can train and play. And the rest of the time you need your body to recuperate, your muscles to recuperate. And he said, I didn't know that. I said, yeah, I knew that, but I never thought I should tell you that. But I said, don't worry, it's a real thing. You can't over. So anything you do more than necessary is gonna fry the shit out of you, like generally, right? Even working too hard, you literally have a breakdown. People literally have a breakdown after like a month of stressful work.
Yeah.
But the point is, there's a lot of fear mongering around it, man. Like literally, people are just trying to make loose ends meet. Like there'll be a shooting in one part of the world, and there'll be someone playing GTA in one part of the world. And I'm like, my kids have, like, my younger one's favorite game is GTA 5. He's played it on the PS3, the PS4, and the PS5. And that's not really a cool thing, Rockstar, just pointing it out. But, like, you literally have rehashed the same game across 3 different generations of consoles. But my kid doesn't have the impulse to pull over a car and steal it and shoot someone. Because he has enough cultural context to realize it's a joke. It's a parody on life. GTA is literally a parody on life. The dialogue, the scripts, the characters, it's a parody on life. The radio stations in the game, it's just a parody on life. And I don't know why some people think that would cause someone to be, and if they say, oh, some people can, well, some people can in everything, can't they? Don't you see road rage drivers on the road then? That's not because they played GTA, because they're just shitty drivers. But anyways, we digress. So now I want to ask you a few questions. Like I had a couple of people hand me questions before this session. So now I'm talking about Pakistani gaming in particular. And I asked from that lens, but I want you to tell me today in North America and other regions, how popular are these mobile games and the new age kind of games in the competitive landscape today in terms of the size of the pie? And how much is still the traditional Counter-Strike, Valorant, Call of Duty, Dota, League of Legends, Warcraft? How much of it is still the traditional structured esports type games? And how much is it now the new Fortnite and the MLBBs and the stuff like that?
Yeah. So North America is very much still a PC console market, and the South America, Southeast Asia, China are very much like mobile driven, and I would put like Japan in the console focused ones. So it is just consumer behavior, and this is just specifically esports games. So like other
No,
games,
esports games.
yeah.
Because a lot of the people, like on my podcast with Mubarak, a lot of people had comments like, for example, in Pakistani context, why did you talk about mobile so much? What about the OG games? And they wrote like, what about the OG games? I'm like, the OG games are there and they'll probably always be there. But mobile is now becoming a force to reckon with at this part of the world. Like, from that context, I wanted to know, like, what are you seeing in North America? What are the popular games still stood the test of time kind of popular games? And what are the new kids on the block?
Counter-Strike, obviously, it's always there. Will always be.
Because it's always brilliant.
Yeah, it's always going to be there. Now, at least in the Western markets, like Valorant, League, Apex, PUBG, PC.
PUBG PC, you mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, your Dota, your usual suspects, right?
And they remain the
and
largest.
of course, your new card games that come out. Yeah, so your usual suspects in the North American and Western markets, and then of course the newer mobile versions of those type of games are much more adopted in South America and Southeast Asia.
Because one of the things, and that's where we discussed, we'll take your help on in Pakistan when we launch in a month or two. Pakistan, for A, socioeconomic reasons, and B, simply because we're close to China, and a lot of the content also makes its way here from a gaming point of view. We've become over time a mobile first market, at least for now. And as much as people, gamers or the purists, for some reason purists believe mobile gaming is not gaming, right? Uh, and I would like to differ because I've seen stadium in Pakistan, stadium events around Free Fire and PUBG. I've seen university, like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people,
Yeah.
campus events around Free Fire, PUBG, being the predominant larger ones, right? So I don't agree with that as much as it hurts people. But I've seen that for various reasons, Pakistan has become now a mobile first country. It's not saying that we don't focus on the big games. We don't focus on. I mean, we have Counter-Strike tournaments coming up. We have literally we just finished a Valorant one. We're doing a couple of the other. We just did EFC, but it's seeming like it's more and more a mobile focus, which is why we wanted to work with you for MLBB. That was literally our first tournament when the company went live. PUBG, obviously, Free Fire, obviously, we're partnering with Free Fire as we speak. How, in your opinion, how difficult or how different or how complicated is it to create that same infrastructure or that community or that feel of being part of something bigger when you're doing mobile gaming? And I'm really interested to know because, like I said, Pakistan is turning into a mobile first market. A very large, probably one of the largest in the world because of the population, but still a mobile first platform market.
Yeah. I think the way that I think about this is like more on the sociology level, and basically like why do people come together to both play and watch sports and entertainment in general, right? And whether it's television, PC, console, or mobile, right? They're just different ways to access the same
Content.
dopamine hits that you get, right? And so if the question is, if the question is like how will like the esports behavior and the community building be different between PC players, console players, and mobile players, I don't think there is much, right? Yes, like a console player will probably be accessing like the communication systems on their phone versus a PC player who would have a second screen, right? Like that's the difference. But other than that,
Then I want to understand, and this is a lot of me learning as well, because even though I've been at it for a few years, you've been at it for almost 3 times as much as I have. Why do mobile games get a bad rep in terms of competitive gameplay? I mean, have you played Call of Duty Mobile? It's freaking brilliant. We used to have office playoffs in my previous office, a couple of hundred people, man, like literally around in the months of Ramadan and stuff.
yeah,
It's a beautiful game, right?
Yeah.
And some people I know, not some people, a lot of people I know here buy a large Samsung or iPads, like Samsung tablets or iPads, simply to do Call of Duty Mobile or PUBG like mobile on their screens. Why does it get a bad rep then? Why do purists not think it's just because it doesn't cost as much? I think I think there's a little bit of a snob element there. I think it's because it's much cheaper to get into.
I haven't heard cost being a thing. I think from a core gamer's perspective, core meaning PC and console. But then like even in between PC and console, the PC master race will always kind of have their beef with console players.
I don't think the PC master race really gives a shit because they're so elite in whatever they're doing that they don't really care. But like a lot of the mass esports or competitive gameplay guys, they really do look down upon mobile. I've seen this in Singapore. I've seen this in the US. I've seen in Pakistan. It's like, mobile. I'm like, yeah, it's like freaking 5 million people like
Yeah,
in a month.
It's really about the skill curve, right? And when you have more control over the movements, the aiming, the other things, obviously with a mouse, your pinpoint pixel perfect things, your skill curve at the very top, right? There's a lot of difference. You can have a huge difference with like 1%, 0.5% versus whereas your precision control on your something like a mobile is not going to be as close as a mouse, right? And obviously like You know.
No, but a lot of people use these really funky, like DualShock type controllers with their phones.
Yeah. So even like so right now like there is auto aiming in shooters for console.
Yeah,
That's
there.
part of it, right? There's never going to be auto aiming on PC. So you already see those kind of things like trickling in where you have to use compensation like auto aiming in order to make console players competitive to PC when you're actually cross-platform, right? So
Well, unless you're one of those purist console gamers who like use a keyboard mouse with the
yes,
console,
yeah, 100%.
which is super easy to do these days. Super easy
Yeah,
to do.
and then you plug that in, and then your auto aim gets turned off.
Yeah, but then your overall game experience improves as well. Because ain't nothing beating a keyboard and a mouse combo, man. I mean, the level of tactile freedom that setup allows you, especially if you have a high DPI lasered mouse where you're like it's like literally like a left hand, right hand situation, man.
Yeah. But
it's so
like,
cool.
yeah, we're like.
Have you seen the gun mouse?
Which one?
The gun mouse?
Oh yeah. I used to play Mongolian style, which is like I don't use a keyboard. I use a one-handed controller for my movement.
Yeah, I know.
The thing, and then you use a mouse.
Yeah, it looks like that nunchuck that would come with the V.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really good.
Now I use something similar to the Razer kind of pad, but it's a startup that actually does it. I forgot their name, but I should give them a shout out. It's a really nice product. They custom make it for you, and they 3D print it, and it looks like a claw, a reverse claw, and basically you have access to like 40 buttons with one hand, right? It's insane.
I saw the gun one though. That it like shaped like a gun and you're like playing. I think it's more of a novelty, but like, but yeah. I mean, so yeah, because those are one of the things we plan for in Pakistan. Like, because dude, the number on mobile gaming is just ridiculous here.
It's just access, and I think that's a good thing for the industry. I really
100%.
Yeah.
These people would never be able to afford an RTX graphic card. These people would never be able to afford having the kind of infrastructure that's required in Pakistan, especially with the power outages. These guys would definitely not splurge for a 200,000, 180,000 rupee PlayStation 5 or an Xbox. Definitely wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Mobile, and kudos to people like Tencent and Garena, like Free Fire and PUBG. They've optimized that game to the nines, right? That game can run at 60 FPS on like the cheapest Android phone there ever is. Omar got like, just for shits and giggles, he got this phone. You know those QWERTY keypad phones, the Chinese phones, with like a little 2.3 inch screen. It has something called Android Mini, Android Go. Have you seen it? Android Lite. We installed PUBG on it.
Nice.
It's like a 2.0 screen, and he made a few kills. That's how insanely that game is optimized, right? So I mean, but yeah. So on Battlefy, are you guys geared towards mobile gaming today? And I don't mean just from an integration point of view, but from an experience point of view.
Yeah, we are increasingly so. Our core markets have traditionally been North America, Europe, and parts of South America that are sort of PC and console focused. But mobile gaming has inevitably like crawled onto our system because we're an open platform and people use them for that purpose. And yes, there's gonna be like different kind of UX and use cases that we have to, accelerate on. But yeah, like we're definitely accelerating our support into mobile.
So over the last couple of weeks, me and you have been here in Pakistan. We've met government officials, we've met B2B companies, we've met sponsors, fintechs, we've met them all, right? And I want to know what your view was on because you've seen this you're active in about 7 regions across the world right now.
Yeah, all regions across the world, obviously some regions more than others, and SEA is definitely a growth region.
So I want to understand, based on the conversations you had, what did you get a view of? What could the next 24 months look like for Pakistan and for you in Pakistan? Just based off a lot of the ambient information and knowledge that you've gotten.
I think first and foremost, it was great to see the both the public and private sectors, their positive perspective on gaming generally and what they can do for the youth, and having that kind of ecosystem support for an industry like this is massive. Is massive.
Very important, yeah.
Right, and it took some years even for Western Western regions to kind of get here, but Pakistan was already here, right? That understanding. So it was just great, and not only do they see the benefits, they're actively investing and being part of growing this industry and getting those youths involved, building actual industries and business models around it, right? So I think these are all like very positive signs, and then obviously the demand is here, right? Like the spending and the behavior in this country around video games is very comparable to, other countries around the region, right? And so gaming is a global culture, right? We can take a very similar playbook, and the kids, we'll call them kids, but the gamers here they're going to understand certain memes and things that, people in London or in Japan are writing. And so I think expanding here would be not only very fruitful for both the private and public sectors, but also a very straightforward playbook.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest positives that I found in our meetings with especially the government was how simple it was to get them to see value. And I mean that in a good way, because generally government gets a bad rep where the assumption is you'd have to spend a year of your life to get a point across.
Yeah.
I think we were there for like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
tops.
They
And
got it.
They knew it. They knew we were at A, and they knew, oh, this is going to be B and C, and we'll do this. And we'll kind of share what that is leading into near the end of the podcast. But I think there was a clear sign as any as to the awakening about the scale at which it is now, which brings me to my next question. A lot of our viewers have said they don't see much tech in on your platform, and that's very question specific to Pakistan. And I didn't want to answer them on the forum, so I was like, you do realize if you come to Pakistan, you'll have to do some stuff about creating brackets for Tekken, right? That's one customization I think Battlefy is going to have to do, because we have 2 sitting champions, 1 world record holder, 5-time EVO and regular, EVO US and Japan, Arsalan. And Namco Bandai looks at this market very closely, and I've already told you about this. So it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. You're going to have to do something to accommodate Tekken players.
We got you.
Yeah, man. So that's very important. So to a lot of our listeners tuned in or tuning in to view this whenever you do, there's a very specific reason we're partnering with Battlefy for Pakistan. We felt that people here, the quality of gamers has gone up a lot over the last 5 years. And because none of the international platforms are here, none of the international publishers or distributors are here, getting involved with the platform, or competing on a platform like Battlefy, puts you at better odds of playing with the best and upping your game and being recognized on a global scale. But also having a platform, a local/international platform like Battlefy and Raptr, we're actually planning to help the government of Pakistan roll out a national esports campaign across all cities of the country, so that you heard him talk about it at the beginning of the podcast, that creating an infrastructure or a structure around it is very important for any industry to grow. And our esports industry today is very similar to where he said Canadian esports industry was about 12 years ago, that everything was grassroots, everything was fragmented, everything was community based, there was no infrastructure around it. So I think that's what we are planning to do, is create a formal infrastructure, first on the public side in terms of recognizing this or getting this recognized as an industry and the rails around it. And the second is creating real career opportunities for people around esports. So one of the biggest reasons Raptr and Battlefy are coming into the market is one of the biggest problems esports players have is they don't get paid out. This is a very Pakistani problem. They don't get paid out. They don't get their prize money. They don't get their prize pool if it's a team. They gotta chase after it for weeks and months. There's no digital infrastructure. Everything's pretty analog, and labor intensive, human intensive. So one of the things Raptr and Battlefy aim to do is, and we hopefully will launch together on the same date, is that not only are we bringing the best esports platform into Pakistan, but we're also bringing the digital payment rails to enable it along with it, which means players get paid out instantly, players have access to their earnings instantly, they don't have to chase after everybody, they can spend that money any way they like on goods or items or just generally cashing out. This is a big problem. We had 3 tournaments last year, 23-24 fiscal year. 2 of those tournaments still haven't paid out their players. And I'm talking large tournaments, like North American large tournaments. And 2 of the tournaments haven't paid out their winners yet. So we talked about, I used this word, the trust metrics are completely different. Gamers here suffer from very low trust in the ecosystem. And that's something I spoke to you about and that we hope to fix with the Raptr ecosystem and the Raptr Wallet and Battlefy coming in. Leading into the end of this podcast, because I know you've been traveling and this is way too much talking in one sitting for you, but what are the top 2-3 things we as a gaming culture or as a society of gamers can do to improve the adoption or the acceptance of gaming locally within our circles of influence? Because I'll tell you, we're still a very Eastern, and you'd identify with this because you go back home to China as well. We are still a very, very traditionally Eastern society in the sense that the nuclear family has a value, the extended family has a value, you live with parents, you live with elders. Their point of view has a value, regardless of how rebellious you want to be. If they don't like something, it does affect the way you behave, right? If your husband doesn't like something, if your wife doesn't like something, if your girlfriend, boyfriend doesn't like something, your grandfather doesn't like something. So gaming is still, by and large, in terms of the traditional fabric of the society, I wouldn't say taboo, but thought it was a waste of time, right? So we did a talk like last year at a school, and we talked about creating positivity in our circles of influence. So what are those 2-3 things you think gamers can do today to create positivity in their circles of influence? Because only if society reaches the tipping point as a whole do we see this industry really grow forward. Because so how does esports make money abroad? Sponsorships, brands, that's it. That is it, right? Who are those brand managers and marketing managers and chief marketing officers in those brands? The same people that live in the society with us. So as long as they don't believe that it can be something valuable, they'll never invest. And if they'll never invest, it'll never go beyond a certain point. So what can we do to improve that mindset in our circles of influence? Might be a very deep question, I'm so sorry, but just want your view on it.
Wow, that is a big question. Cultural adoption takes time. What can accelerate it is if it has a general positive impact on society. And so, on different scales, people can make difference on this topic at different scales, right? There's a lot of gaming communities that raise a lot of funds, charity funds, off of like streaming, right? And events, like huge amounts. It's a community that cares, right? And is filled with a generation that cares about social impact. Yes. So there's a lot of.
It's a very close-knit community.
Exactly. And so a lot of sway within the younger generation, right? So I think that's number one. I think everyone can get involved in that, whether it's in your school, in your community, and whatever, right? Number two is, a lot of games are already in, like, corporates, in certain jobs that we already see it, at least in the West, like, they're already kind of championing the understanding of what this activity and industry is about, right? So that's just going to happen organically. But half jokingly, if your parents are in like large corporate enterprises at senior executives levels, like tell them about like what is happening on TikTok, on YouTube, right? Tell them which teams just won X million dollars playing some tournament. Tell them about the Esports Olympics, right? Because they're not going to know unless you tell them, right?
Agreed.
And once they get a glimpse of that world, it's hard to turn away once you see the numbers. But the hard part is they don't see it, right? So yeah, do that. I think
Now, the last question I want to ask you is, we are the crazy ones in Pakistan who started doing this about 2-3 years ago, and nobody was doing it. And we meet a lot of advertisers, a lot of agencies, and we meet a lot of brands as well. And they still haven't gotten out of the bullshit metrics that people like Meta and stuff push to convince people that a campaign or marketing is successful. Like, there's no real focus on conversion, real life conversion. I'm not talking about ads to clicks conversion, but like real life conversion. And a lot of our time is spent trying to convince people why it's important to have your brand front and center in taking a lead in this industry or on this medium, right? And the long-term impact for the brand and the customers that they're targeting. But a lot of times what we say falls on deaf ears because we're representing Pakistan, where the industry is very nascent. I want your expert view on this, coming from a market that's about a decade more evolved than us. What is the true value for these brands and these companies to be associated with these gaming events and esports and the industry in general that people here don't realize yet, and we need them to realize?
Yeah. If you're a B2C company, number one is cultural relevance. It's the same reason why a lot of brands are doing what they're doing in music, fashion, art, and then now gaming, right? It's all about being relevant with a certain demographic, with a particular culture, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, for the same reason that you kind of invest in traditional sports, the same like social dynamics and like values are kind of mirrored in esports, right? That's why it's called sport. But you get an advantage in esports because it's digital native. You have much more measurability than traditional media.
100%. I think legacy media is no longer measurable. It's just garbage.
But that's how billions of dollars in sports media have been bought for decades.
And that's wrong.
Hey,
I believe it's wrong. Now, a lot earlier, but now.
Yeah. So, just for those like simple reasons, B2C companies should be at least evaluating this demographic, especially in a country when your population is 70% youth. Like, this is like a no-brainer because like we in North America, it's not 70% youth.
But I believe that the metrics they chase are wrong here.
What do you mean?
Like, for example, like I said, the reason I mentioned the post-meta insights world, everything is measured, even the offline world, everything is measured in conversions. which is impossible. Like the concept of brand equity is just lost when it comes to gaming. Like you'd have the same people do like multi-million dollar PDL, like BTL activities in malls and public spaces where there is no measurability. Because certainly,
Are you
because
saying they like to do physical activations?